Today, we welcome gardener, forager, and community builder, Jada B. She is the co-founder of the People's Co-op in Bloomington, Indiana, and she is the author of the book, Gardening and Farming Journal, Our Liberation Fruits. Please welcome Jada B.
Hey everybody, I'm so excited to be back for another one of these wonderful webinars with Green America. Thank you so much to everyone at Green America, in particular my homegirl Emma, for helping me out today with some slides and things. We're going to be talking about the most basic steps in a hot water bath, boiling water bath canning. We're going to get into canning tomatoes and an applesauce. So again, this is basic. If you guys are advanced, I'm sorry, this may be some review for you, or maybe you'll learn something you didn't know. I hope so, at least. For those of you who are brand new to canning, I want to demystify canning as a dangerous thing to do. If done right, which is pretty easy to do with water bath canning, you can do it safely and you can do it to preserve the excess from your garden, as well as, maybe it's somebody brings in peaches from Georgia and you want to get a truckload of peaches, but you can't eat them all right now. Or maybe you're somebody who doesn't have a freezer and can't store things that way, or doesn't want to. The canning method, especially the hot water bath canning method, is one of the best ways to preserve your garden abundance. So first and foremost, we're going to talk about the difference between water bath canning and pressure canning. And Emma's going to throw up some images there for you. Water bath canning is the cheapest and easiest method of canning and preserving high acid food. Foods that include fruits, pickles, and veggies, which sufficient vinegar has been added to raise the acidity. And if you see in this picture, unfortunately, the pictures of the actual apparatuses are switched, and I don't know why, but the one that is in the green area is actually the water bath canner, and the one that is in the white area is actually the pressure canner. So I apologize for that, but this had some very good information in it that I wanted you to see. So high acid foods with a pH of 4.6 or lower is what we're talking about for water bath canning. Low acid foods with a pH above 4.6 is what we're talking about for pressure canning. So boiling water up to 212 degrees kills molds, yeast, bacteria in an acidic environment. And the pressure canner reaches 240 degrees Fahrenheit, eliminating botulism spores that can survive the boiling process. So again, what you're going to be doing in a water bath is the fruits, the fruit juices, the jams, the jellies, the preserves, pickles and relishes, sauces, and tomato products with some added acid in there. And then what you will be doing in pressure canning is vegetables that aren't going to be pickled. So you're not adding a brine to those, okay? You can do meats and seafood and poultry. You can do soups and stews and low acid tomato products. So things that perhaps don't reach that high quality of acid in them. And so it's real important to note that pressure canning does take a little bit more knowledge, okay? And the thing about pressure canning, especially with the new pressure canners, is that they are way more safe than they ever used to. I'm sure some of you who are older remember stories or have even seen pressure canners that have kind of broken and the pressure dial has shot up into the air and embedded itself into your roof. They will turn off before that now. So they have a lot of safety engages so that you don't have to worry about the danger of that. But it does take practice. It does take a lot of knowledge. You do have to do your research on it a lot more. And you do have to, it's best if you've learned from someone else. Canning in general is best to learn from somebody else, but in particular, pressure canning is best to learn from somebody else. I would say that water bath canning is something that you could just read a book, watch a YouTube, watch our webinar, and start canning tomorrow. Pressure canning might take a little more research than that. So what we want to do is, there's also an altitude adjustment for boiling water bath canning. If you live above 100 feet or more, you have to increase the processing time for your canning. So I have a great little book here that's going to show you what that is. So I'm going to do that, and if you want to screen grab, you can. But the book itself that you can get is The Backyard Homestead. Now, I am not recommending this book because I think it's the best book ever. I'm recommending it because it does have a really quick start canning guide. So a couple more terms to think about when we're talking about canning. There is raw or cold pack. These phrases are used interchangeably. They refer to prepared but uncooked fruits, vegetables packed in jars with hot liquid added to them. And then they're processed in the water bath. So that hot liquid is usually called a brine. We usually call that a brine, okay? Or it could be with the fruits, it could just be the hot juice from the fruits. Hot packed refers to foods that are pre-cooked and are put into jars for processing, and it makes them more compact packing, particularly with greens. Hot packing requires less cooking time since the food is already partially cooked. Sometimes it takes longer if it's denser packed. And then the other thing that we're going to talk about, will you show that other picture that we had there, pressure canning versus water bath canning for me real quick? Thanks, Emma. Just another visual to help you, since that other picture was a little confusing. As you can see, the water bath canner it looks like an oversized large cooking pot, whereas the pressure canner has its pressure gauge on it. Okay, and then we can go to the next slide, I believe. We're going to talk about how to sterilize your jars. We're going to talk about the jars themselves, okay? So, and then we'll get into some of the other tools that you may need to do water bath canning. So when you're taking a ball jar, which is the standard jar to use, there are other companies that make canning jars. I particularly prefer ball jars because I have found weaknesses in some of the other companies. That's not to say that they're not of value. It could have just been the batch that I got. But ball jars have consistently done me well, and it's what my granny used, and it's what anybody I've ever canned with has used. So I prefer it. Plus, they're pretty much available everywhere in the United States of America and in Canada. And if you're finding us from other places, you can probably get ball jars too. So let's talk a little bit about the sizes that we have today. This is a quart, which is 32 ounces. The next size is a pint, and this happens to be the largemouth variety. So this is another pint. As you can tell, they're the same size. They're 16 ounces, but this is the largemouth variety, meaning that when we open these up, we see that the opening is much larger than this opening. And this is for, like, if you want to do spears, it's like pickle spears. It's a little bit easier for canning in a bigger wide mouth jar. This is kind of more good for jellies, jams, things like that. But if you're doing something like maybe you're pickling green tomatoes, and you need a lot more room in the jar, but you still want to keep them small, instead of using a larger size, you can use these wide mouth. And pretty much all of the sizes, except for the 8 ounce and the 4 ounce, come with a large mouth. Okay, so This is the 16 ounce, which is the pint. This is the half pint, which is 8 ounces. And this is the 1/4 pint, which is 4 ounces. This is great for if you just want to give people little samples of something. You may not know if they like what you're cooking, so this is really great for that. I like it for jellies, and in particular, I like the quilted pattern on all of the ball jars. It just makes them look a little fancy. Um, you know how ball jars can be fancy. So yeah, so those are the sizes. Now there are much larger sizes of bottle jars rather than the quart. I believe the next one is a gallon. However, in most standard water bath canners, they come almost to the top. So you have to leave headroom in there, which means you're filling the water up way more, which means as it's boiling, the water spurts out the top a little bit and creates a little bit of a mess. I really think of those a little bit more as storage jars, even though they're rated for canning, which you can perfectly well can in them if that's your business. Like especially if you're doing pressure canning and you want to do meat, that might be a way to get a whole chicken in a jar. But for the purposes of the basic water bath canning, I don't use them for canning. I do use them in my storage capacity. So let's see. Okay, ball jars. Can we show that sterilization picture again? I'm sorry. So when we're sterilizing, we want to heat up our canning, our canner, and get the water boiling. And then we're going to put our jars in. And I'm going to do that right now for you and show you how I do it. First of all, I'm going to talk to you about two different tools I have. This is what we call a jar lifter. And if you get a brand new canner, water bath canner, it might come with these. If not, it's going to be right next to it, right, for sale. And they just pick up your jars like this, okay? It makes it easier for you to get them in and out of the water. But I find sometimes that, especially if they're filled up and they're heavy, that can be kind of hard when I'm just trying to get the water out of it after I've sterilized it. So I use my tongs and I pick it up out of the water so I can keep the water inside of the water bath. Now, because I've sterilized my tongs and my water bath kit or my jar lifter, I don't have to worry about transferring things. Okay, so these have been sterilized already. And by sterilized, I mean they've been put in the hot water. Okay, so if we notice, okay, we're going to put our canning jars in, and so we're going to switch over to this little area over here. I have you on wheels. So this is my canner. I bought it secondhand because a lot of times in Southern Indiana, you can find these at the thrift stores. You can find them at Goodwill or whatever, but you can also go to a what it's called. Oh, a yard sale. You can find them at yard sales a lot. So I'm going to take my lid off. And I've already got a nice rolling boil, as you can tell. And I'm going to put my jars in. And I'm getting the water inside of my jars. Now, my canner also came with what's called like a canning caddy. And I'm going to show it to you here in a second. It's like a rack for the jars. And so they sit in there kind of snugly so they don't knock around. And as you can tell, mine that came with my canner is pretty rusty. And so I don't really like using it that much because it's pretty rusty. So I bought a new one and it doesn't quite fit. So because I'm doing larger jars and smaller jars, that really only works for the smaller jars, like the pint size and below. I'm just saying, okay, fine, I'll use it without that for right now, which is perfectly fine to do. Okay, adding some more. Now, when you're using jars, it is best to use brand new ones. Because I make things for sale. State law requires me to use new fresh jars, but you can reuse jars. You just have to make sure that there are no chips or scratches around the top or on the jars itself. Like you don't want any cracks or anything like that for the jars. But you can reuse the jars themselves, but I suggest getting new lids every time. Every time you use them, because the seals, while they may work a couple of times, you want your seal to work every time. So a brand new lid is really where it's at. And I'm going to show you those right now. So these are your lids, okay? This is the ring, and this is the actual lid. And you see that little rubber bit around there? That rubber bit is what helps seal the jar down. The ring sort of helps keep it in place, but that is really your lid. And in fact, when you're done canning, you can take the ring off. So the ring you can use and use and use and use, just like the jar, as long as there's no problems with it. But the lids, truthfully, you want to replace every time you're reusing the jar. Again, I sell commercially in Indiana, so I have to replace my jars every time. What I do is I'll take the spare jars that people maybe give me back, or that, if I happen to eat my own product, then I reuse them for myself in the house, but I don't reuse them commercially because, I don't want people to think they're getting a second-hand product, but it's also state law that I have to do that. So right now, I put all my jars in. They've got to be in there for a good 15 minutes. And then they will be sterilized. So because the water is already boiling, is why I'm saying 15 minutes. And then I also will have to sterilize my lids as well, but that comes a little bit later. So I don't have to sterilize them right now. And essentially what I'm doing is I'm getting them heated up so that they will suction onto the jars, okay? A few more things to go over. The proper tools to use. A lot of people will tell you that you can only use non-metal in your jars. Here's the problem. The plastic ones tend to break down really easy when you're putting hot things in and out, and then you're getting little microplastics in. And so while I do use these a lot of the time, I'm at a point now where they're at an age that I need to start throwing them away. And I don't really want to do that because of plastics. So a lot of times I use my metal spoon. Again, it's been sterilized. And so my hands have been washed, everything's been sterilized, my countertops have been sterilized. And I use this funnel. So the metal, it goes through the plastic first. So the plastic is what's touching the glass, not my metal. So the metal never touches the glass except for when I'm pulling the jars out. And again, it's been sterilized. And usually I try to use my jar lifter. There are times where that is not possible. Just the grip doesn't work sometimes. Okay. Yes, again, so we went through the jars. So I have two 5-quart pots on the stoves right here in the church. And so I'm making one applesauce and one is tomatoes. The applesauce is ready for the next steps. I'm going to tell you how we prepped the applesauce. If Emma, you could put up those pictures and I will just talk the pictures of the applesauce, please. And I'll get back to the head room. Sorry. So that's how the apples went in. They were frozen actually, because I harvested a bunch of wild forage apples and then I cut them up, get all of the seeds out because you know the seeds contain cyanide, and the stems and all that. And then I put them into gallon freezer bags and I freeze them. So what's in the pot in that first picture that you see is 1.5 gallons of apples. And then the second picture, you can see how much they've cooked down. Normally, if I were at my house, I would add more apples so that the pot would be pretty full, so that I would be doing a full 5 quarts worth of applesauce. But we are not at my house, and I don't have access to my freezer. And I didn't bring extra because, yeah. So we're gonna just make do with what we have today. I also did not bring my little hand blender, so this applesauce is gonna be a little bit more chunky, which is fine. You know, it's not gonna be a smooth blend. So in the apples in the first picture, what has been added to them? Okay, about a cup of apple juice. Now, you do not have to use apple juice. This is just according to the recipe that I'm using. There are tons and tons of applesauce recipes out there. I am using one that asked for juice, and I happen to have it. If I didn't have it on hand, it would be water. So it would be a cup of water in the bottom. And in particular, because these are frozen apples, there needs to be some sort of liquid at the bottom to help, heat up and get those apples to, cook down. I'm also going to be using about a full 1/4 of a cup of lemon juice. You can use lime juice if you want. I don't think it tastes as good with apples, but it does. Lime juice tastes really good with certain berries like blueberries and blackberries. It tastes really good rather than lemon juice. So that's a thought. You can swap those out. The acid is pretty much the same in them. So I'm using a full 1/4 cup of lemon juice in there. And we're at the stage now where it is time for me to kind of stir it up and mash it down a little bit and start adding the sugar and the flavoring that I want to add into it. So I'm going to roll y'all back over here. And put around and get to it. So here's our applesauce. It has been cooking for a good hour. A good hour. Can you see? Oops, and I spilled some. Great, that's okay. So even without my blender, it has mixed down quite a bit. And in fact, I have it on really low. It was up high and it was really cooking down. Now, some people say, like, why do you add sugar to it at this stage? Sometimes the apples are sweet enough. And yes, that's very true, but the sugar is the preservative here, along with the acid in the apples, the acid in the apple juice, the acid in the lemon. And the sugar also acts as a preservative. So my original recipe calls for 4 cups of sugar. I am not using 4 cups of sugar because these apples are very sweet. So I am using 1, 2, and a half. It may actually just be a 4th. So 2 1/4 cups of sugar helps the medicine go down. And I'm noticing, because I was talking to you guys and not paying attention to my applesauce, it's much thicker than it normally is. Again, I also didn't blend it too, so things are just a little thicker. And so what I'd like to do is add just a little bit more splash of my apple cider in here. Okay, so again, that may be like a tablespoon or more. And then that's just because I like a little bit of a looser applesauce. This batch is actually going to a family member who can't take their pills orally, so they need to put it in applesauce. And so it's better if it's a little looser for them. So these are the things you got to think about when you're making applesauce. And I'm following an actual canning recipe. I'm not just following a recipe that is like just for quick home use. This is meant to be put in jars to can. Okay. And if you were asking me questions, I can't see it right now. I just want you to know. So, okay, I've got my liquid where I want it. And now, I put my sugar in. And now I'm going to add some seasoning. And the key to a really good applesauce, for everybody who is wondering, is that you need at least 2, if not 3 different types of apples. And I have 3 different types of wild apples here in this pot. That's good. We may actually have to add a little sugar. Okay, may actually have to add a little sugar. All right, I'm putting some cinnamon in. You can put spices in something this acidic, but you want to make sure that your spices aren't going to be so much that it will turn it alkaline, because you need the acid. Okay, I put cinnamon in. I'm putting some ginger in. Sometimes with the applesauce that I make, I put maple syrup in. And then my secret ingredient to a really good applesauce is cardamom. And if you don't know what cardamom is, they come in little green pods, and the seeds are inside of them. They're little black seeds. They're actually a relation to the pepper family, but they taste like if cinnamon had a sexier cousin. And it's used a lot in African cooking, and East Indian cooking, and Indian cooking, and lots of cooking all over the world. And now I'm going to grab my spoon for a real taste. I was just tasting on the outside rim here. The sugar will need to cook just a little bit more. Guys, I could bathe in this. That's that good. Yeah, the wild forage apples are so sweet. And because they were frozen at the height of their sugar concentration, they just kept all of that, and we cooked all the water off. So they're just sweet and appley, just like the most appley apples you've ever tasted. So good, friends. I wish I could share with you through the phone. Smell it through the phone. Smell it with your eyes.
I can confirm that your applesauce is great.
Thank you. Okay, so that's going to cook down just a little bit more to make sure that all of that sugar is incorporated. And we're gonna move over to our tomato sauce right now. So I'm gonna wheel you away. How smart am I to thought of this, I guess? Okay. Here's the tomato stuff. Now, it's really just tomatoes, okay? The tomatoes don't have anything in here other than a cup of water, a fourth of a cup of lemon juice, and about a half of a fourth of a cup of apple cider vinegar. And that's because I wanted to try this particular recipe, and that's what they told me to do. I will also be putting a sprinkle of salt in here. When you're just canning tomatoes, and these tomatoes, again, they were frozen. I pulled them right out of my freezer, but I need the freezer space, to be really honest, because I had so many tomatoes this year that I had to can a bunch of them. And so it was like nonstop tomatoes this year. And so if you look at that, it's really just the tomatoes just boiled down and into the pot there. So there's a little bit of water. We had to cook some of that water off. It's still cooking off, and we'll wait for a little bit. If you want to remove the skins, then you can use something like this, which is a food mill. Okay. And what it has is a little grinder in there. And you put it together. It's real easy to put together. You set it on top of a bowl. I'm going to turn you around so you can see a little closer. Woo, here we go. Sorry. You put it on top of a bowl like this, and then you just pull a little bit of you pull a little bit in at a time into the grinder, to the mill here. You hold it down and you turn the crank. And what the mill does is it separates out the skin from the juice of the tomato. So you can just make tomato juice. You can just make a refined juice. Now, there are some that have smaller holes than this grinder here that are really, really fine, and you can filter out the seeds as well. This particular grinder belongs to the church, and it did not have levels of holes. Now, I have a grinder at home that I use when I'm making jams and jellies, especially if I'm making jams from blackberries and strawberries, because there's so many seeds, and raspberries, there's so many seeds, and not everybody likes seeds in their jelly. And so or jam, I should say. So I grind all of that out. I'll sometimes do that when I'm making pasta sauce. But in this case, I am just making tomatoes. Okay. I'm not trying to make a particular style of tomatoes. I'm just making some tomatoes, canned tomatoes. That's it. And so my preference is to leave the skin on and to leave the seeds in, because I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it. Right. So I'm not sure whether I'm going to take this, the tomatoes and put it in a chili, or I'm going to make a pasta sauce with it or something like that down the road. I just want to have the canned tomatoes on hand. If I want to do that later, when I go to open up the jar to this, I can put it in a food mill and I can process all of that out later. But this is the quick and easiest way for me to get tomatoes in a jar out of my freezer and ready to use as quickly as possible. Okay, so that's the food mill. The food mill is relatively cheap. It is kind of a necessity for processing food in a water bath canner, whether it be if you're doing jams or jellies or pasta sauce and tomato sauce. Okay, so we're going to go back to our main table and talk just a little bit more. I hope I'm not making you dizzy, because it's making me dizzy. Our jars are almost done, almost ready to come out. And I'm gonna have to figure out a place for that. Oh, in the meantime, if you could put up those pictures again. Do I always use frozen apples or tomatoes? I always have frozen apples and tomatoes. You can use them, you can do it fresh. It's perfectly fine to do all that stuff fresh. It does still have to be cooked for these particular recipes. But you can pull them straight from the garden and can them. 100% you can. You can pull them off the tree, cut them up and can them. 100% you can. I do all of this prep beforehand in terms of the freezing and stuff like that, because it makes it easier. Because I can basically I can make applesauce all during the winter months and just pull my frozen apples out as I go. And I don't have to make them all in one sitting. Because if I did that, I'd be canning for 2 or 3 days at a time. And it probably more than that. And so there are some people, like you'll see on TikTok videos, you'll see Italian families get together and they'll make the sauce for the year for all of the families. And they process tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of tomatoes in one setting. I mean, they're talking pounds and pounds and pounds of tomatoes that they're processing. And that's great, but there's also usually 20 to 30 people there to help them. And it's usually just me in the kitchen, and my wife does not help me. So I like to do it at my leisure. So I will can anywhere between, like in one sitting with the tomato sauce, I'll can like maybe 2 full rounds of tomato sauce, which in a 5-quart pot is 5 quarts, right? So I'll do 5 quarts at a time. So maybe we'll do 2 cycles of that. So I'll maybe do 10 quarts in one day. And then with applesauce, it just depends on who I'm making it for. If I'm making it for the market, then I'm processing, oh gosh, I don't know, about 40 pints in one sitting. If I'm doing it for my family, it ends up being a mixture of the large quarts and the pints. So it just depends on who I'm making it for. But that again will take 1 full day. If I were doing it all at once, probably that with the apples that I have, I'd be canning for 5 days straight. Okay, so you're looking at the frozen tomatoes. You saw how things went in, and now you saw where they're at. So the apples have probably started to, all the sugars have probably broken down, but now we need to talk about what to do with our lids. So as you are looking at the pictures, can we go back to the headspace one? And just take a look at that for a minute while I go and grab a pot. So, as we're getting ready to do our canning, we have to sterilize our lids. So we put our lids into the pot here. We're putting our lids into the pot. I'm going to put water on top of it, and then I'm going to set it on the stove. And much like with your canner, you want enough water to cover the lids, okay? You want the lids to be covered in water. Okay, so that's going, we still got our cans going, got our apples going, still got our tomatoes going. So you see how like sometimes this can be hectic and you can be like, oh gosh, what's happening? So I'm going to talk just a little bit about some other things while we're waiting for that to heat up. One is with your tomato sauce. So this is what the finished product would look like. Okay. That's a tomato sauce. So this has some other ingredients in here. This has a little bit of garlic. This has some herbs in it. So you can do that. You can put herbs and things like that in there. Again, as long as the acid is still high, you can do that. There are pH strips that you can get to test how high the acid is in your tomato sauce. There's also a tool that you can get to do that. This is just the tomato juice. And as you can see, there's no extras in there. It's just tomato juice. See how thick that is versus this? Okay. So with my tomato sauce, I could put herbs in there. I could put these dry herbs in there and just let them sit. You'll see a lot of the nonas on TikTok when they are making sauce, they'll put a clove of garlic in and a couple of leaves of basil in. And pretty much their sauce is it's just the ground up tomatoes and those two items, and that's it. And like the preservation stuff, like some lemon juice and maybe some apple cider vinegar, maybe even some citric acid if they really want to go for it. But they don't put a whole lot in. You can put things like peppers in. Like I said, garlic, you can put other herbs and things like that in, but everything has to be cooked and it has to be really well cooked. You don't want it to be raw at all, because that can introduce, you can get molds and things growing if anything is raw in it. Now, you can pickle raw peppers by pouring a hot brine over the top of them. But you don't want to add uncooked peppers into the hot cooked food into a jar. You have to cook it down first with the sauce that you're making, and then put that into the jar. So like I said, it's the difference between cold packed and hot packed. So if you're doing cold pack, that's a brine, a hot brine that goes over the top of it. If you're doing hot packed, it's cooked and then it is processed in your canner. When the tomato sauce is done, it should look something like this. And this. And you can see there's some give in it. It's pretty thick though. Okay, I'm just trying to remember. Oh, yes, I know. We talked about buying fresh lids. You can just buy these lids. And so they come in like a 12 pack. And see, you can buy these lids and replace them. They also have rings for sale, and then they also have rings and lids for sale. So just so you know, it's easy to find. It's probably going to be where the other canning supplies are. You will also find in the canning supplies pickling salt and citric acid. The pickling salt is more salty, if that makes sense, than like table salt. Or like iodized Morton salt. And it's up to your recipe to tell you whether you need pickling salt or not. Some recipes call for the citric acid. I find that it actually is like too acidy for some things, and then all you're getting is an acid taste. And if you're someone like me who has like some stomach trouble and that even eating tomatoes, you know, I'm a sexy girl, so I have stomach trouble. So that even eating tomatoes can be a problem for you. You want to keep with the bare minimums of acid that you need. Adding some more citric acid can kind of take away from that. Some people use citric acid in particular when they're making jams and jellies. You can, I mean, again, you can find recipes for anything and everything you want that are specifically for canning. So you just have to look a little bit. And I do recommend Ball Jar's canning guide, but they will suggest to you to use all of their products, okay? So they'll be like, oh, you want to use the Ball pickling line, you want to use the Ball citric acid for this recipe. So you can just search just a little bit. So yes, some people have said that you shouldn't boil the lids. They're not going to go to a boil. They're not going to reach a boil. I should say that. They're going to get hot enough so that I can transfer liquid to liquid in them. So they should not be boiling by the time that I get to them. However, I have occasionally forgotten and they have boiled and I've not had a seal problem yet. And I'll teach you how to check your seal later. Okay. And some of that has to do with your headroom, which is what we were talking about earlier. So the headspace and headroom. So in the canner, the water bath, you need to keep a headspace. You need to keep a certain amount of water over the top of the jars. And that can get difficult when you're using the big ones. And like I said, they're the big gallon ones that almost come all the way to the top. And so the water kind of sputters everywhere. So it does create a bit more of a mess. And if you are looking to avoid tons and tons of mess, don't can. But if you are looking to avoid that particular mess, then it's better to use these quart jars. But then there's also headspace in the jar. So if we can, sorry, can you throw that lid back up? That headspace picture back up. One more time, I'll be able to talk to you about it. So this is the suggestion for preserves, fruits, jellies, and tomatoes. For fruit butter, which is a little bit different than fruit juice and preserves. For fruit itself, so if you're canning pears or apples. For salsa, for pickled vinegar, and then low acid pressure canning foods, they definitely want you to remain below that the bottom level of the top of the neck of the jar. I almost always stay around that area of the neck of the jar to give it a little bit of extra space. For me, it's that I don't want to overfill and have it be a problem if I don't get a proper seal. So yeah, so you can use that as a good guide. It's a great guide to look this. That headspace is important because it is helping you kind of get that extra room for that process of sealing things down. Okay. Oh, can you go back to me now? Sorry. The last thing that you can put in your sauce, like you can use some pepper, you can use other spices. But the one thing you want to be wary of is oils and fats in your canned goods that go in the water bath canner. Oils can introduce bacteria, and bacteria can lead to botulism, and you just don't want that. So I have done things where I have oven roasted tomatoes where I had to put some oil on them in order to roast them. I did drain off as much of the oil as I possibly could. And then when I cooked them down, I scooped up any skim of oil that was on the top. So a very bare minimum of oil went into the bath canning, but then I also raised the pH way more than I normally do. So it had a little more acid in it to begin with, hopefully to combat the fat from the oil. I did that with sauce I knew I was going to eat fairly immediately, not sauce that I'm waiting for 8 to 12 months to consume. Stuff that I know that within the next 2-3 months I'm going to use. So it was also according to a recipe. I found a recipe, they told me how to do it, and I did that. The key thing with all of this is to stick as best to your recipe until you start realizing, oh, I know how this goes a little bit more. Like I can tell when my applesauce is ready by taste, by smell, by the texture. I can tell when it has enough acid in it. I can tell whether it is ready to go or not, because I have worked with it for a while. And the last thing I'm going to talk to you about before we start the actual canning process is when you are doing jams and jellies, most of them, hold on one second, I'm hearing something. It was our lids. They were getting close to boiling, so we stopped them. Okay. So the last thing I'm going to talk to you about is pectin. When you're cooking jams and jellies, most recipes call for pectin. Pectin, however, is gelatin based. And for those of you who are vegan out there, or for other, if you're selling at a market or whatever, you don't need to use pectin. You can use agar agar. And this is the brand of agar agar that I use. Okay? Agar agar is a sea moss. It is like a yeah, algae. I don't know what else to tell you, but it gels just like gelatin. And the difference in it, it's also clear, and pectin has a bit of a taste, like you can taste the horsey hoof kind of taste to it, to me at least. And again, I'm not a vegan, so I just don't like the taste of gelatin. But agar agar has it has no taste. It has no taste that I can discern whatsoever. And most people that have my jams and jellies cannot tell that there's any kind of gelling agent in there. But if you're doing jams and jellies, you've got to have a gelling agent, and agar agar is the one I suggest if you want to go vegan. Okay, and this is the brand. It's called Telephone Brand Food Additive. It is the one that's most consistent. It is the one that all of my Asian friends use, and so I use it because they know what they're doing. It does reduce the shelf life of your jams and jellies by like a couple of months. So whereas your jams and jellies may go out to 6 to 8 months, maybe 12 months, this is going to be more like if it's 6 months, it's going to go down to 4. If it's 8 months, it's going to go down to 6. If it's 12 months, it's going to go down to 8. It's not that big of a deal. I do find that if I refrigerate it, if I refrigerate all of those jams, they last way longer, right? But I don't often have space to do that. So I just eat more jams. This is what I'm trying to tell you. The key thing with this is if you're doing a 5-quart batch of jam, you need a whole pack of this. But you also need to do there's a test to make sure things have gelled where you pour it onto a little plate and you sit it in the refrigerator and you wait till it gels to see what degree that it gels. So start with half the pack and then go to the full pack. It is not a 1-to-1 ratio when it comes to pectin versus agar agar. You'll have to play with it, or you'll have to find recipes that are specifically around agar agar and canning. Okay, but this might be advanced, so stick with the pectin, especially the pectin based recipes if that's what you want to do. But I use it on a regular basis, and I find that if I do my gel test in the refrigerator, I can pretty much figure out how much agar-agar to use over pectin. But I've also been making jams and jellies for 25 years. So, okay, I think we are ready to start actually filling up our cans or our jars and get to going. So I'm going to move you to a different location, and I'm going to start unloading the jars so that I can fill them up. Yeah, maybe I can do it right here. Okay, yeah, I think I can. All right, I'm gonna need this book. And we'll talk a little bit more about this process of putting them in the jars, okay, while we're doing this. So I'm turning off our applesauce. Normally in my own home, I have a countertop right next to my oven. And so I do all of this right next to my oven. I don't bring this off the stove. But that's not what we have here at the church, so I have to make do. So I'm opening that up. I'm setting down a cloth because it will soak up some of the water that is going to happen. I got to move you guys a little farther out so that I can bring the jars over. I am taking the lid off the canner. I turned off the heat. And I am spreading the jars out. On our surface here. And while we do want to be fairly quick with this, we also have to remember that we're human and we're dealing with hot things and we don't want to burn ourselves. And so we're going as slow as we can right now because I am not used to canning in this facility and I don't want to break anything and I don't want to hurt myself. Now I put enough jars out. I put enough jars in the canner for the full 5 cups, but as we can see now, or 5 quarts, excuse me, as we can see, we don't have 5 quarts worth of applesauce here. It's a little less. Okay. I'm going to put my lid back on my canner to reserve the heat that's in it, but I'm not going to turn the heat back on quite yet. I'm also going to grab my lids that did not reach a full boil. I promise. Okay. All right. Everything I need right here. I'm going to bring you guys back in so you can see a little better. How's that? Good. Okay. All right. So now I'm gonna take my funnel, place it in the first jar. I'm thinking about putting some num looking applesauce in here. Also, you can take, once you've got this applesauce at this level, you can cook it for even longer. And I mean like maybe 4 or 5 hours more, and you will get apple butter. Another really good thing to do with apple butter though is to add the maple syrup. It will give it that smokier taste. I know that my Hoosiers here in the chat, yeah, I saw you Hoosier, know that real apple butter is done in a copper uh, pan, but not everybody has a copper pan. So we have to do with what we've got. So I am taking my applesauce and I'm plopping it into the jar. And once I get right around where that headroom is, I remove that. And it's kind of deceiving because um, I had the lid, I had the funnel on. So I've gotten a little too much in there. So what I'm doing is I'm taking a little out. And you see I've made a mess. And so I'm going to go back and clean that up here in a minute. So I just have to be a little more careful. I was talking to you guys and not looking what I was doing. Okay. So this one should be pretty perfect. Yep. Yeah. Oh, that's pretty perfect. That one is good too. Here is always the trick when you really should start from the back to the front, and I can never remember to do that because I have the ADHD. And so yeah, so sometimes I get fruit on the outside, but we will wipe that down before we put it in the canner back. And I'm kind of gauging out because we didn't have a full 5 quarts in there. I'm kind of gauging out how much I want to put. Like I want to get a mixture of the jars, so I want to make sure that I'm getting some in the pint jars and some in the half pint jars too. Now, you just saw me touch the outside of the jar. Like you can touch the outside of the jar, but do not touch the inside rim with your bare hands. You want to do that with either something that is a hot water that has hot water on it or something that has been sterilized. Because even though my hands are relatively clean, this is where you can introduce um, molds, botulinum toxin, that kind of stuff into your applesauce, which nobody wants. It doesn't taste good. It also will kill you. You see, I'm touching that outside. What I'm trying to do is shake down the sauce in there to make sure that I don't have any air bubbles. Now I'm looking at how much I have left, and I think this is enough for a pint rather than a half pint. I'm making a little more pints than I'm making half pints, which is okay. I should say also, a lot of canning involves curse words. And if you can't handle curse words, canning is not for you. Because sometimes the water will splash up and you'll get doused with some hot water. Sometimes when you're cooking jam in particular, it will scald you. And that's the worst, it's the absolute worst. Okay, so we unfortunately don't have quite enough to fill the entire jar there. We're still gonna go ahead and can it, but we're gonna use it immediately. We're gonna put it in our refrigerator and use it immediately. And I'm just stealing a little bit from some of the other jars to even them out. But you can see that I made a bit of a mess, so. I am taking, you can do two things. You can take paper towel. You can take a rag that is really clean and sterile. And you can dip it in the hot water that you use to sanitize these things, or you can use white vinegar. I do not have white vinegar for work, so we're gonna do this other method. And this is just to clean things off around the edges and the top area. So that I can put the lid on. We want to get the water off the lid, put it on, and you want to seal it finger tight, not any farther than finger tight. There are some people that like to use a spatula in here. I find that with applesauce, that's not necessary, but when we do the tomato sauce, it will be necessary. And I'm trying to just touch the outside rim of the jar and the outside of the jar lid. Again, finger tight. Some of you may be asking me, are these jars hot? Yeah, they're hot. They just came out of boiling water. But I have no feeling in my fingers, so it doesn't hurt that much. So some of you may want to wear gloves. You may want to wear like heat retardant gloves if you are sensitive to heat that way. I'm one of those people that puts their hands in hot oil to check to see if it's hot or not, because I'm dumb. I don't know. I just don't really have that much feeling in the tips of my fingers these days from cooking and other things. So yeah, and I mean it's and even with that, I can tell these are very hot. They're very but it's worth it. Because afterward, there will be lovely apple cider, oh, excuse me, apple sauce for everyone. Hold on one second. Let me be clear, this water is still boiling hot that is in the pot. It is still boiling hot, and that's why I'm using it to clean this off. And I'm not using the water that's still in the lids because it is losing heat rapidly. And so you see kind of how fast I'm trying to work with this. I am, actually that's pretty full now. I am not rushing myself. I know I'm on a clock, but I'm not trying to rush and make a huge mistake or really burn myself or drop things or anything like that. Just trying to maintain a pace, okay? And if there is any excess residue left on outside of the jar, it will be washed off in the canning bath, and you're going to throw that water out so it doesn't. So it won't be, what I'm saying is it won't be sticky when it comes out. And the goal is to get that lid as clean as the top area is clean as possible, so that when the seal happens, it has a clean surface to seal. Oh, you love the color of the sauce. The reason why it's this color is because we kept the skins on, and the skins are where all the num-nums are. So we leave the skins on. Okay, I'm gonna move you back over to the hot water bath now. I'm turning the water back on, so we'll start to boil here in a minute. But while it's starting, we're gonna load it up. Now here's where I use the jar lifter the most, because I don't want to touch the lids anymore. So the jar lifter goes in. Now, the other thing that you should know is that water displacement happens when you're adding jars in. So the water level will rise as I'm adding these full jars in. Because if you remember before, they were empty jars that water was inside of. And so now that they are full, the water level is going to rise quite a bit in the water bath. Let me show you. And so it's a little bit higher than it should be. So I may end up taking some water out, because you only need enough water to cover the very top. Okay. But because I am going to can some tomatoes, I'm going to make use of this extra space that's in here. And I'm going to dunk a couple of jars in here, so that while I am processing this applesauce, I can also sterilize these jars. Okay, so that's going to be going. Whew. Okay, let's go back to our pasta sauce. It has been cooking down like it should. Now is the time where I'm going to add a little salt, and I'm going to stir it a little more. Yeah, so I'm just adding just a little bit. This is probably a fourth of a teaspoon, maybe 2/4 of a teaspoon. If you can see here, it's cooked down quite a bit. We may just get 1 quart out of this. Why? Because I didn't put a full 5 quarts of tomatoes in here. It cooked down. Okay. And we'll go back over here and we have to wait a while. And sorry, friends, before we can get that into some jars. So right now, I think would be a good time to do some Q&A. We have like 15 minutes, okay? And you said you wanted me to look at one screen, so shit. Let's do this one.
Perfect.
Okay. How's that?
That looks good. Thanks, Jada. And I just want to remind folks, if you do have to leave, we'll send the recording around, no worries.
Do the ridges on the top of the jar help to indicate that? Yes, 100%. Yeah, and if we go back to that one image there, sorry, I'm trying to read your things. If we go to that one image, Emma, where it shows headspace. Yeah, the ridges are 100% telling you where to put things at. So a fourth of an inch, which is just a little bit down from the very top ridge. 2 inches, which is two ridges down. And then the full inch is right under the top lip of the jar opening there, right under the top lip. Okay, back to me, friends. Okay, I'm having trouble. Can somebody read me the questions? Because otherwise I'm gonna have to go back and forth. Sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Someone asked earlier about what you would think would go better with raspberries, lemon or lime juice. I think that was the question. That was
Oh, with raspberries? Lemon juice. I think lemon juice would go better. I think the darker berries just taste better with lime juice, and that's just my opinion.
yeah.
Either I have cooked them either way. Okay, I've done it either way. I have a friend that we traded some berries for canning this summer, and I canned his with lime juice. I canned all of his with lime juice. Oh, excuse me, with lemon juice. Excuse me. I canned mine with lime juice, and I think mine tasted better. What do you mean?
For blueberries, I like it both ways, but I
Yeah,
I do prefer lime with blackberries.
yeah.
Mary Kay asked if you always use frozen apples or tomatoes, or how does the process change if you're starting from fresh?
If you're starting from fresh, you're with the apples, you're just cooking them down the same. If you're starting from fresh um with tomatoes, you have to, or you can easier remove the skin at that time by like like poaching them, and then the skin comes off really easy, and coring them and all that kind of stuff. You can just drop them straight into like a hot water, and then core them and take the skin off, and then you can just cook them down. You can do it that same way with the frozen ones too. It just, they will cook down into mush more quickly. So yeah.
Okay, great. And Nicole, I just want to bring your attention to the time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Bye.
Thanks, Nicole.
Jane shared that she was gifted a steam canner and
Yes.
had never used one before. Do you have any tips or suggestions for using one?
So a steam canner is a pressure canner. So she needs to go and look up pressure canner instructions online and watch some canning videos online, and specifically say steam canner pressure cooker. So it is a type of pressure cooker.
What other suggestions do you have for a sweetener other than sugar?
Well, so sugar is unfortunately also a preservative.
Mm,
So it's one of those things that you can't really substitute too much. Um, you can do honey, you can do maple syrup, but you're still going to have to add some sugar to it. So there are conversion tables online where like agave, maple syrup, honey equal how much sugar.
hmm.
So like what I did, my recipe called for 4 cups of sugar, and I just halved the sugar because there was enough sugar in the apples to cover what is needed for um, the preservation process. And that's just something I know because I've worked with apples for a long time. But if you're not used to that, my suggestion is to get those conversion tables and go, okay, it called for 4 cups of sugar. How about instead I use 2 cups or whatever it is of these other sweeteners, but I'm gonna still put at least 1 full cup of sugar in. So at least, okay. And I only use this brown, it's organic sugar, so it's not white sugar. Maybe you can't tell,
Natural,
but
natural sugar.
it's natural sugar. So I'm not using so you get so if you're vegan, then you can use that sugar because it's not processed with bones like white sugar is.
Yeah, our food system's wild.
It's insane.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, the only reason why they process sugar to make it white, friends,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
is
Uh,
because brown sugar is considered to be dirty. People think that sugar that is not white is dirty. That is literally the history of it. Ugh. Okay, there
wild.
were some other questions about frozen berries.
Yep, if you buy a big bag of frozen mixed berries, could you do the same process for a mixed berry sauce?
Yeah, girl. Oh yeah. It doesn't matter how you get that berry, as long as it's not already pre-cooked. Because you've already really just if it's pre-cooked, then it's almost jelly anyways. So yeah, you want the whole berry though. So you don't want halves and you don't want concentrate, that kind of stuff.
Gotcha. Vanessa's asking about if it matters if the pectin, sorry, if you use pectin to make jams and or jellies, does it matter? And I just
Yeah,
want to make a quick note on pectin. You can buy vegetarian pectin. A
you
lot of
can.
it's processed with gelatin. So if you want to use pectin, but you're worried about the gelatin, just read your labels carefully.
Yeah, 100% you can buy vegetarian pectin. I do find that it doesn't work as well as just using agar agar. Ooh,
Hmm.
sorry. But yeah, you can use pectin. In fact, most recipes are going to call for pectin, so you should use pectin if that's what the recipe calls for, and you don't mind the gelatin. Okay, so if you don't mind the gelatin, then that's fine. Use the pectin. I think it has a taste, and I don't want that taste to interfere with the taste of my jam. So I prefer agar agar because I don't think it has a taste. But that's my preference.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of this is just y'all playing around. I'm sorry, that's kind of how cooking is you figuring out what you like versus what other people like, finding recipes that work for you versus what worked for somebody else.
Yeah, and then on a note on the agar agar, I recommend going to whatever your local international food store is.
Mhm.
Like speaking of our messed up food system, if you buy this at a regular large scale grocery store, it's going to be way more expensive than if you
Way
just
more
go to your
expensive.
international store.
Way more expensive. I think they charge 25 cents for these.
Yeah, yeah. So,
So, yeah.
but
So,
if you're like at Whole Foods, it's going to be outrageously overpriced.
yeah. And for
Um,
those of you who are trying agar agar for the first time, try to just make like you would make a gelatin, like a home cooked jello, like in a mold, the old school molds. Try it with agar agar instead of gelatin first. So you're putting flavoring in, you're putting fruit juice in, and just try it first. And you may find that you like it way better. You may find you don't like it.
Yeah.
So before you put it in some jams that you're preserving, try use it first. I had been using it for other things because I made little halo halos, which is a Filipino dish. So
Does the dishwasher sanitize jars well enough?
no, no, not for a water bath canning.
Okay.
Yes, it is sanitizing your jars. It's cleaning and sanitizing your jars. Yes. You want So you can put them in the dishwasher first. Like all of these have been rinsed. They were rinsed before. So you can put them in the dishwasher first, but then they have to go through the temperature raising in the hot water bath. So you want this temperature, the temperature of your applesauce or jams or jellies or tomato sauce. You want them to be as close to the same as possible so that when you are putting your lid and everything on, you're putting them in the canning, you're taking them out. So we're going to do that here in a minute. When we take them out and they come to room temperature, that seal hits. And so everything is the same. We want everything to be around the same temperature. And if you have a little temperature gauge that you can put in things, do that. But you can pre-wash them in the dishwasher and they're clean and sanitized. But part of the hot water bath sanitization process is so that the jar is not freezing cold, like especially if you keep your house cold and so it's room temperature, or it's not so hot like you don't, because grass or glass can crack. So
Yeah. Jem lives in Hawaii and said that a lot of the new types of apples like Honeycrisp and Envy and Cosmic Crisp are making appearances there. And they note that those apples are wetter. Are
yeah,
those still good to use for canning?
yeah. You're just cooking them a little bit more. And again, it's up to you what your consistency is. As you can see here, it don't move.
Hmm.
It don't move because this is a thick bitch. So it don't move. Okay. Because I like them thick. I like it thick. Um, but some people prefer it a little wetter. Like I said, I'm making what we have today. I'm going to be giving it to a family member who needs to mix their pills in with applesauce in order to get it down because they can't take pills anymore. And so I'm making it a little wetter so that it helps to dissolve the pills in it. So it's really up to it's your choice what consistency. It just depends on how long you cook it before you can it.
Thanks, Jada.
And I will say Honeycrisp are great. They're great apples. There's a new apple out called something Tango,
Mm-hmm.
that is delicious. It is so good. So I had some when they were testing them in Minnesota years ago when they were first out. And they were so delicious and so the apples on the inside were actually red from how strong the apple skin was. And they were so good fresh off the tree.
Jada, can you use the water bath method for canning like leftover soup and things like that?
You can them for a short period of time if you're going to put them in the refrigerator. Soups, stews, things like that, that maybe have meat in them or have some sort of butter, oil in them, really, really, really should be kept, pressure canned. You really cannot use anything that may have even a little bit of oil in it. You want to stay away from that. Also, like most soups are not acidic enough, right? Um, a lot of soups have a meat stock base. So those things are not acidic enough to use for what we're talking about.
Gotcha. Any other questions?
I feel like I saw delicious, yes. You spelled malicious right. I feel like I saw something earlier.
Did I miss one? I've been trying to read all of them.
It's real hard. My brain don't work.
We were making jokes about Whole Foods.
Oh, whole paycheck, yeah. Freezing, looking forward to freezing your apple harvest. Yes, that sounds good. Yeah, okay, sorry.
Yeah, thank you so much to those who have joined us and have stuck around this long. I think we've only lost like 6 people, so this is
Yeah,
wonderful.
yeah. Yeah. So I know it's kind of a pain. This is just a longer process. And I tried to jumpstart. I mean, imagine if I had not cooked everything first. So, it's just a long process, and there's a lot of dense information. I feel like I gave you. It is time for me to pull out the jars that are going to go for the tomato sauce. So I'm going to do that real quick, and yeah, we can do that. And then, you've seen the actor, okay? This is the actor. So one of the things you're talking about is you'll hear the lid seal, and it'll go pop. It'll just make this little sort of sound when it is sealing on. And then like, look, I do have my hand underneath so that if it comes off. So you have to use a can opener to open this. Unless you're really strong, right? So it will seal, and it will seal when you hear that little pop, and it's what it is this. Can you hear that? It'll sound sort of like that. And it's the jar lid. It's the whole thing coming down to temperature. Okay, so it's coming down to room temperature, and in that process, it seals itself up. Now you see what I mean by this is not for the faint of heart. Okay, and that still has to go. I think another like I think 10 minutes on that. But right now we can take the sauce off. Can it up. But before we do that, I have to wash our jar real quick. Our I have to sterilize this guy. So he went into the hot water. He got washed thoroughly, and now he went into the hot water. He is as sterilized as we're gonna get. Okay. No, I don't know if you can see, but look how good that looks. Oh. And these tomatoes, before they went in their freezer bags, I cut off all the bad spots on them. They didn't have any, bad bits on them whatsoever. They also didn't have, their like the stems or the like inside a little bit. Again, when I go to use this, I can put this through a processor and remove out all the seeds so that it looks more like this instead of having seeds in it like this. But whatever I can do to save myself time, especially when I've got a lot on the go, is what I do. And so for right now, I'm just going to fill these up as they are. And then if I decide later when I go to pick them out and use them that I don't want the skins in, that I don't want the seeds in, then I can put them through my food mill and remove that stuff. And it's just that easy. Okay. And I already have some pre-shrunk lids. Right there. And I'm going to use this jar. It's not cooled down yet. I don't know if you can hear the weird sounds of this dropping into the jar, but it's not exactly appetizing. There's a certain plot that was happening. All right, now back down to it, I can kind of pour. And as you can tell, I did not gauge good enough, but I will use this jar sooner rather than later. Because that's a lot of room in there. We don't want that much room. But that was the end of the tomatoes, so. And now they will go in the water. While the applesauce comes out. Just so you know, you need a good, strong grip on this stuff as you're pulling it in and putting it, pulling it out and putting stuff in. Because especially if you're transferring from this far away, like I said, I generally transfer right next to the oven, but I'm not in my own kitchen today, so I don't have that luxury. But when you are that far away, you've got to have a good grip. Come on. Oh, the other thing is that you want to try to keep these things upright. You don't want them to fall over. Falling over is a no-no. And again, because of water displacement, the water is now not high enough to cover these. So I'm going to add some more water in, and I may have to add even more water in. Yep, a little bit more. And already, there we go. That's good headroom on there. Already the applesauce jars are popping. We sit here, we can listen to them. So there you go. Canned applesauce. It only took us 3+ hours. Get a greater appreciation for your grandmother now, don't you? I know I do.
Absolutely. But I mean, it takes a long time, but you're saving money, you're controlling the ingredients, if you're shopping locally, you're getting more nutritious vegetables,
100%.
fruits. So
100%. And there is no commercial applesauce in the world that could compare with your applesauce. Now, y'all can't compete with mine, but
true, true.
your own applesauce, it just tastes better. Your own pasta sauce, it just tastes better. And yeah, the ingredients are a part of that, but you are adding the element of love and effort. And sometimes love is just effort. And it comes through in the taste. Yeah, the ingredients matter. Where you get everything matters. How, if you grew it yourself, if you got it from a local farmer, if you got it organically, yeah, that matters. But on the bigger thing is that you put the effort into it, and that's, look, McDonald's is tasty, but it's never going to hit the way a home cooked meal hits, and that's just the truth. And so if we're living in this food economy, in the hellscape that we are living in, we need to realize that being able to grow our own food, can our own food, and save our own food is the pathway to self-sufficiency. Did you hear it? Did you hear it pop? So the last thing I'm going to say about this is that you don't want to touch them. You set them out. You don't want to touch them until they've cooled completely. I love it. And then you go through and you do the process of unscrewing all of the lids and testing to see if the seal has happened. And you need to do that for every single jar. And then you can either store them with the ring on loosely or store them without the ring on. It's up to you. I leave the ring on because I'm just like that. And then I also sell it commercially, and so it looks better with the ring on. But yeah, so you want to wait until everything is down to room temperature. I have, in my house, we have stone countertops. Look, they was on sale at Lowe's. I don't know what to tell you. But stone countertops and metal countertops are best to set them on.
No, no, it looks like we lost Jada. Let's give her a chance to log back on. And while we're waiting, oh, she's back already.
I think I froze up or my phone died.
I think your phone died.
Sorry.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me?
Yep, you're good. Can you hear me? Maybe you can't hear me.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes, can you hear me? We can hear you.
Okay, you can hear me. Okay, good. Okay. Sorry. Um, so we got to the point where we have to unscrew the lids, right? We did all that? Yes, no?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if you have metal countertops or you have stone countertops, they are the best to cool your items on because they're a little bit cooler than your room temperature, especially if you're canning. It's going to be kind of hot in your house, so they will help cool them faster. Okay, if you don't have those things, not a big deal. Formica, wood, whatever it is, totally fine. It just will cool them a lot faster when you put them directly on the metal or a stone surface. Okay. And I think that's all I have, unless you guys have questions for me.
No, no more questions in the chat. Thank you so much, Jada. You started this webinar by saying you were hoping to demystify
Yeah.
this canning process, and I think you've successfully done that. Again, thank you to those who stuck around this whole time. I put up a QR code for Jada's book, and also in our last webinar, you all requested a Green Living webinar on plastics and how to reduce plastic in your life, and ask and you shall receive. We'll be doing that in January.
Nice.
Um,
There is one last question, Emma, that I'd like to answer.
oh, go ahead.
What if your jar doesn't seal? You got two options. One, you can just put it in your fridge and use it as soon as possible. Two, you can put it back in the canner and try to get it to seal then. Or you can change, yeah, I guess you have three. You can change the lid and do that as well. So it could just be that the lid was not maybe defective. So if your jar does not seal, you can just go ahead and use it in your refrigerator as quickly as possible within the next week or so. Or you can retry to seal it through the canning process. And that involves either getting a new lid or reusing the lid that you have. I would suggest putting a new lid on. Sorry, that's it. Thanks, everyone. I really appreciate you staying.